There are no current productivity indices. That is what APS is currently engaged in doing. So we are doing the research so that we can have productivity indices. What that means is there is no measure of productivity. And that is one of the factors that is killing the industry, or rather it's one of the factors that is hampering the industry, because we want to be productive, we want to produce more, but we are not necessarily setting productivity standards. We have policies, we have the CADAB, which has certain numbers attached to it, such as 6% agricultural growth for the different African countries, but that is not being achieved.
You say 6% of agricultural growth, Rwanda is looking at 10%, but that is just numbers. Yeah. One thing that bugs me all the time is that we're still looking at a meager 4% when it comes to the global production. And we know that Africa has at least 60% of the arable land in the whole world.
Yeah.
What is not being brought to the table to ensure that this land is actually being used to increase the productivity in this particular sector?
Well, I'm not sure why, because agriculture on the continent is 54 countries. But what I can allude to is a lack of action. Lack of action, like as you pointed out, is 60 to 65%. It's there. We sit, we have conferences, we write beautiful policies. It remains. It remains beautiful reports. It remains. So one of the very important things is political will. Political will is very important because it offsets the action and implementation of existing policies. The policies are there to reduce this uncultivated arable land. There are many policies, but the implementation thereof can basically not remain on paper. So I would allude that to lack of implementation.
Just the other day, I was speaking to a gentleman who broke down the real necessity of doing soil testing to understand the pH, to understand the acidity, to look at some of the composition of the soil before carrying out agriculture, even putting the inputs that you were just talking about. How much is research being given a platform when it comes to much of the decisions that are being made around different sectors? Of course, agriculture in the limelight.
Not enough. Not enough, because as we have mentioned previously, to say, yes, we come up with these policies to say we got 65% uncultivated land, but we need to bring in the experts to test the pH level of the soil, to test the availability of underground aquifers. And irrigation is also a very important aspect of it. You can have cultivatable land which is not cultivated, but is there sufficient water? And when you say it's uncultivated, which crops are we specifically looking at? What are we going to put there? Are we going to put rice in a place where it doesn't rain? So expertise is it's a necessity, you know. And research, there's clearly not enough being done, because if there was enough research being done, after the experts release their reports, then it moves on to the implementation stage. So on many occasions, it happens that we write these policies with guesswork, sorry to say. Like, oh, okay, we can do this, do that, without really first laying the groundwork to really know the feasibility of cultivating that arable land. So R&D research is it's lacking. We need to have dedicated institutions that have a continental reach and is able to disseminate this information on a continental level, because we are always talking about integration on an African level.
And I just wanted to bring that conversation about integration. Do you really think that intra-regional or intra-African integration and all of this AFCFTAs that are being signed will actually have any impact on the production?
That is the purpose. That is the purpose of the...
Are we going to see this happening? Because, I mean, beginning this interview, you say that there is lack of political will. signing, there is one thing as signing papers and there is another thing as implementing what is in the papers.
Yeah.
So what timeline are we looking at?
To be honest with you, it will be uninformed of me to give a specific answer on that. What I can do is take you back more to the productivity. You know, with what we are doing, we are integrating national productivity as organizations on the continent.
Sure.
Yeah. So what this entails is to capacitate and strengthen the existing ones, which there are 10 of, as well as to facilitate the establishment of the rest of them on every single country on the continent. Once that is in place, and we coordinate their actions and activities so that it runs as one machinery, which disseminates real-time information to all the member states at the same time. That's on a productivity level. So when it comes to agriculture, it's there are agriculture drivers out there. There's the CADAB under the auspices of NEPAD. They deal more with that. They are able to really go into specifics as to the timelines. We are just for productivity. So I don't want to put myself on the chopping block. Yeah.
Okay, let's just bring this back. Now, of course, another conversation that is center stage when it comes to productivity and also agriculture in focus is technology.
Yes.
We've been talking about technology for maybe more than 5 years now. The technology that has been introduced in the agriculture sector so far, what tangible contribution has it given before we even look at upgrading this particular conversation? Well,
with the tangibility thereof, first of all, we need to have records. We need to have statistics of implemented projects, because that is how you will be able to gauge the level of efficiency. So let's concentrate on the smallholder farmer. So this, which makes up, I think, roughly 65–75% of the agriculture setup, it's from smallholder farmers. If they buy an irrigation kit to help with increase the produce,
can they afford it?
Some can, some cannot.
All right.
Yeah. So when they implement that on their small 1 hectare farm, 2 hectares, whatnot, how are we able to gauge? How are we able to gauge the effectiveness thereof, which comes back to an integrated records keeping system? Because if we just implement and develop in isolation, we will not be able to gauge our performance, our progress. We won't be able to gauge if we need to improve, how we need to improve.